understanding. It's what we're all after. So let's make it ours. Because when we collaborate better, we dream bigger. And when we dream bigger, we can change the world.
Okay. Wait for a little more people to get in while I look up today's first story. How's that look? One second here, guys. Just got to bring up the first subject for tonight. Oh, okay. Sorry, I just had to think of the name for a second. Okay. So for tonight's first topic about the paranormal and the trying to get the lighting right here, and unexplained, we dive into. Well, I will talk about the topic as well, mixed in with the documentary, but that's a little too bright. But it is mixed with the documentary Demon House. And I'll read a little bit about it and discuss it a little further afterwards. Demon House is a 2018 American documentary horror film directed and written by Zach Baggins, starring Baggins, Billy Tolley, and Jay Wasley as themselves. The film follows the Ammons haunting case. We'll go in more detail about it while we talk about the documentary. Um, the Ammons haunting case and was released in the United States on March 16th, 2018 by Freestyle Releasing, with supposedly lost footage from the film itself being released on January 1st, 2019, and an uncut version airing shortly after on February 16th, 2019. Thank you. Let's get into Demon House. So Zach Baggin himself, and if you guys aren't familiar with him, he does like the ghost hunting programs, and he's written some books, and he's like the paranormal like collector, and he has a famous haunted museum that I visited twice in Las Vegas, and he holds some of the most cursed and haunted items known on Earth. Almost all of them. Well, the main pop culture ones, at least. So, as a little background for Zach Baggins, Zach Baggins purchases the house in which he alleged Amon's hauntings occurred. Baggins leads a team of paranormal investigators to investigate the house. According to the film, strange things began happening, and the crew becomes fearful of what they may have become involved in.
Not like last week.
Commercials. Zach Baggins, the host of Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures, yeah, that's what it's called, Ghost Adventures, wrote and directed Demon House, the second film he's made since 2004. The film is based on the mass hysteria which surrounded the 2014 alleged demonic possession in Gary, Indiana, of the Ammons family. So now let's get into the alleged hauntings themselves. The Ammons haunting case, also known as the Demon House, is a purported haunting and demonic possession which occurred in Gary, Indiana in 2011. Latoya Ammons, her mother Rosa Campbell, and their three children claimed paranormal activity occurred in the residence. The story was published in 2014 and received national attention. In November 2011, Latoya Ammons, her mother Rosa Campbell, and their three children, then ages 7, 9, and 12, moved into a house located at 3860 Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. Days after the family moved in, they claimed black flies swarmed the porch in December and kept returning repeatedly, despite efforts trying to get rid of them. It's always funny how bugs like black flies, and you think of the Amityville Horror with the flies and the priest. It's always like bad omens are associated with bugs like that, or what are those beetles called? And scarabs. Like it's always like certain bugs throughout history, at least when it comes to bad omens that are associated with just like a bad sign all around. You can't get rid of them. Explaining myself. So after the flies, Campbell initially heard footsteps in the basement and doors creaking. Later, she alleged to have witnessed a shadowy figure of a man pacing in the living room and found a boot print on the ground. Campbell claimed she was choked by an unknown force. Amon's 12-year-old daughter had claimed to have levitated above her bed unconscious during a sleepover with a friend. They were said to have prayed until the girl returned to the bed. The daughter had no memory of the incident. The older son was allegedly thrown across the room by an unknown force. The younger son allegedly had his eyes roll into the back of his head and was growling, saying, "It's time to die, and I will kill you." The family reached out to their physician, Jeffrey, and I'm going to butcher the last name, Jeffrey Onyeku, on April 19th, 2012. When he visited the house during the supposed haunting, he noted their behavior was delusional. Someone from the office contacted police after the police arrived. The children were taken to the hospital. The older boy was described as acting rationally, while the younger boy screamed and thrashed.
Your cheeseburger deserves a nice big slice.
Thank you, Burger King.
You can taste over 70 years of our family commitment to high quality, real, natural cheese in every bite.
I'm doing good. How are y'all liking the episode so far? I don't have YouTube Premium, so eventually I just have to skip the commercials. Back to the subject. In 2012, the Department of Child Services, DCS, was alerted to the family. The DCS believed that the children were performing for their mother. Sensational stories published in outlets such as the New York Daily News reported that DCS personnel had allegedly witnessed the youngest boy walking up the wall backwards. A 37-year police captain, Charles Austin, believed the paranormal activity occurred in the house. A photo published by the Indianapolis Star claimed to show a shadowy figure when no one was home. The family hired a Reverend Michael Magnot to perform an exorcism. He interviewed the family on April 22nd, 2012, and concluded they were being tormented by demons. He eventually performed 3 exorcisms, 2 in English and 1 in Latin. One exorcism was performed on Latoya Ammons. The Ammons family moved to Indianapolis in 2012, after which the events were said to have stopped. Now let's get into the skeptical analysis of the case. Physician Jeffrey, and again, I'm probably going to mispronounce the name, um, Onyeku? It's a Onyeukwu. My apologies if I'm butchering these names. Had been skeptical of the entire incident and failed to witness any paranormal incidents. In his medical notes, he wrote delusions of ghosts in home and hallucinations. Eamon's children had a history of irregular school attendance, with a complaint filed against Eamon's in 2009. In 2012, she blamed her children's continued irregular attendance on the purported demonic activities. So she believes, or has a at least open mind about it somewhat. Skeptics have said worse. According to skeptical investigator Joe Nickel, Police Chief Charles Austin was an admitted believer in the supernatural, including ghosts and spirits. Nickel reported that the photo published by the Indianapolis Star and captioned "Photo by Hammond Police" was, according to the Hammond Police Chief, not an official photo and was taken by Hammond police authorities. Nickel also interviewed a number of witnesses and concluded that the supposed supernatural events were either misreported, embellished, or exaggerated, or had non supernatural explanations, implying that the girl simply threw herself upwards. While the walking up the wall backwards incident failed to mention that the boy's grandmother was in fact holding his hand throughout, which allowed the boy to push himself up against the wall and walk up it. Landlord Charles Reed stated he had never experienced any supernatural events at the house. His prior tenants also claimed to have never had such experiences. At the time, Amons was behind on lease and used the claimed paranormal activities to avoid payments. The tenant, who moved in after Amons, had not noticed any paranormal events either. Reed believed the events itself were a hoax. The children were interviewed by psychologists, and several professionals concluded the children were acting deceptively and in accordance with their mother's beliefs. Tracy Wright, a psychologist, noted that the youngest son acted possessed whenever he was challenged or asked questions that he did not wish to answer. I am reading about the Amon's hauntings in Indiana, uh, the supposed demon house. Going back to the Zach Baggins tie in with this story, in 2014, Zach Baggins purchased the house for $35,000 and demolished it in January 2016 after filming a documentary in it titled Demon House. That was released on March 16th, 2018. Dread Central Steve Barton called it one of the single most compelling documentaries on the existence of the supernatural that I have ever witnessed. Los Angeles Times reviewer Noel Murray called the film hooey. According to skeptical investigator Kenny Biddle, the film has also been characterized as a pseudo-documentary, meaning it is filmed in a documentary style but doesn't portray real events. The 2020 film The Deliverance is based on the events themselves. And I have never seen Deliverance. That's what it looks like, the poster. My neck is sore. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I've never seen The Deliverance. I've seen Deliverance, but this is about a whole other subject.
Sleep better.
So going back to the Zach Baggins drawing board, um, so I visited his museum twice, and he after he finished the documentary Demon House on that house and demolished it, he kept like some of the, I think, soil that the house stood on, and like a portion of the stairs, and like part of the basement and the stairs or whatever, like just scraps of it. But he like recreated it in his museum, and those were the actual ones from Demon House. And I'll show you guys a picture. I hope I have a picture, because they had strict rules about filming or doing pictures inside the museum. So I couldn't take pictures any of the times I went, but I think that he might have a picture of the stairs themselves in his museum. So this is kind of what it looks like. It's in a section of the museum. Uh, so here's the door. I think this was the back porch door, if I'm not mistaken, if not the front door. One of the two. Some items from the house, along with the poster, and the stairs and power generator themselves. So that was actually part of the house. More stairs and artifacts. And it felt weird when again, I'm like a healthy skeptic. I obviously I have an open mind when it comes to things like that. But like it was, I remember, like, because you go in this room, you like peer your head out to like look at the artifacts that were saved from the haunted house. And yeah, it felt weird. It felt heavy. There were a lot of places in that house that did, especially the basement. All right. So what do you guys think? Do you believe in the demon house hauntings? Voice your opinion below while I take a sandwich break, because I haven't eaten today. That was like my first bite of food all day. Show us how you eat a sandwich in one bite. Pretty poorly. Okay. A lot of heavy strings. Ooh, I don't like that picture. I was like the grudge girl at the top of the stairs. I remember when I saw The Ring when it first came out, the American remake. Oh man, I was way too young to watch it. I was like 7 years old. It seriously, at the time, was like the scariest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, that bitch made me afraid to go to like the lake, even though like she obviously, just the whole water connection. But I can't eat the sandwich in a long bite. I'm sorry. Yeah, I remember The Ring seriously being the scariest movie I ever saw at the time. Now I just look at it as like objectively, like it's just a good movie. In a world of bad remakes, it's actually a pretty good Americanized version. Sequels, not so much. That's creepy. Yeah, if you guys ever find yourself in like downtown Vegas past the Stratosphere, make your way to the um, Zach Baggins Haunted Museum. I think everyone should go at least once. Excuse me. My day is well. How was yours? Your sandwich's worst nightmare. Yeah, it's my favorite food. Shall we continue? So, for any viewers watching, I don't know how familiar you are with the Conjuring movies, but Conjuring 2, I'll get into is actually based off of the Enfield Poltergeist. So, we're going to get a little bit into that. And it was part of that whole Ed and Lorraine Warren. And if you guys don't know who they were very famous paranormal investigators. And they kind of themselves were like Zach Baggins when they collected haunted items and they kept it in their basement. They were famous for having the haunted Annabelle doll, which we'll get into as well. And yeah, kind of like the precursor to Zach Baggins. It's another bite of my sandwich. Mm. Mm-mm. Take my medicine, and we will get started. Well, that's not good, TJ Maxx. Okay, let's begin. Our next paranormal and unexplained case is the Enfield Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist was a claim of supernatural activity at 284 Green Street. Lower this a little bit. You guys hear okay? 284 Green Street, a council house in Brimsdown, Enfield, London, England, between 1977 and 1979. The alleged poltergeist activity was centered on sisters Janet, aged 11, and Margaret Hodgson, aged 13. Here's a picture of the house. A little hard to see. Kind of like your typical London flat. You're right. I don't know why I'm not wearing my glasses. Where did I put them? Surprised I'm reading so well, not wearing them. That's whatever. I could read without them. What's up, Merlin? All right, let's get into the story, shall we? Some members of the Society for Physical Research (SPR), such as paranormal investigator Maurice Grosse and writer Guy Lyon Playfair, believe the haunting to be genuine, while others like Anita Gregory and John Beloff and found evidence were unconvinced and found evidence the girls have faked incidents for the benefit of journalists. Kind of sounds like the conclusion that they got into about the demon house. I wonder if they'll blame mass hysteria again. Always seems to be something then like that they kind of just reverted to. Same thing with exorcisms. If you're not part of this Catholic sect and you don't believe in that stuff, a lot of people like to blame it on like intense schizophrenia or mania. Members of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, CSICOP, including stage magicians Milburn Christopher and Joe Nickel, criticized paranormal investigators for being credulous whilst also identifying elements of the case as being indicative of a hoax. The story attracted press coverage in British newspapers, has been mentioned in books, featured in television and radio documentaries, and dramatized in the 2016 horror film The Conjuring 2, which I think might be my favorite of the franchise. More so than the first one. These are the claims. In August 1977, single mother Penelope Hodgson called the Metropolitan Police to her rented home at 284 Green Street in Enfield, London, saying she had witnessed furniture moving and that two of her four children had heard knocking sounds on the walls. The children included Janet, aged 11, Margaret, aged 13. A police constable reported witnessing chair wobble and slide, but could not determine the cause of the movement. Later claims included disembodied voices, loud noises, thrown toys, overturned chairs, and children levitating. Over a period of 18 months, more than 30 people, including the Hodgson's neighbors, paranormal investigators, and journalists, said they variously saw heavy furniture moving of its own accord, objects being thrown across the room, and sisters seeming to levitate several feet off of the ground. Many also heard and recorded knocking noises and a gruff voice. The story was regularly covered in the Daily Mirror newspaper until reports came to an end in 1979. Hold on a second. Spooky stuff. Okay, let's get into the investigations. No, I think I'm good. The investigations. Paranormal. Society for Physical Research (SPR) members Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair reported curious whistling and barking noises coming from Janet's general direction. Although Playfair maintained the paranormal activity was genuine and wrote in his later book, This House is Haunted, The True Story of a Poltergeist, 1980, that an entity was to blame for the Enfield disturbances. He often doubted the children's veracity and wondered if they were playing tricks and exaggerating claims. Still, Gross and Playfair believed that, even though some of the alleged poltergeist activity was faked by the girls, other incidents were genuine. Other paranormal investigators who visited the Enfield house included American demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. who were convinced that the events had a supernatural explanation. According to Brian Dunning, the Warrens' visit was short. Ed Warren tried to persuade Playfair that money could be made from this case by writing books and selling movie rights, and then the Warrens left. Janet was detected in trickery. A video camera in the adjoining room caught her bending spoons and attempting to bend an iron bar. Gross had observed Janet banging a broom handle on the ceiling and hiding his tape recorder. According to Playfair, one of Janet's voices, whom she called Bill, displayed a habit of suddenly changing the topic. It was a habit Janet also had. My TV just cracked. That was creepy. When Janet and Margaret admitted pranking to journalists, Gross and Playfair compelled the girls to retract their confessions. The two men were mocked by other researchers for being easily duped. Physical researcher Renee Hayes noted that doubts were raised about the alleged poltergeist voice at the SPR conference at Cambridge in 1978, so a year before the case actually wrapped up. Okay, yeah, 1978 at Cambridge, the video cassettes from the Enfields were examined. SPR investigator Anita Gregory stated the Enfield case had been overrated, characterizing several episodes of the girls' behavior as suspicious, and speculated that the girls had staged some incidents for the benefit of journalists seeking a sensational story. Gotta find my glasses. It's kind of hard to read. John Beloff, a former president of the SPR organization, investigated and suggested Janet was practicing ventriloquism. Both Beloff and Gregory came to the conclusion that Janet and Margaret were playing tricks on the investigators. Did you? Was it in one bite? In the first edition of BBC series Hauntings, broadcast on 13 October, I read that backwards. On October 13th, 2024, it was revealed that the unexplained voice of Bill Wilkins was later played on an LBC radio talk show featuring Maurice Gross. A listener to the show identified the voice as that of his father, William Charles Wilkins, who had lived at the house, had gone blind, and suffered a hemorrhage and had died in a chair downstairs on June 20th, 1963. Melbourne Christopher, an American stage magician, briefly investigated the Enfield occurrences and failed to observe anything that could be called paranormal. He was dismayed by what he felt was suspicious activity on the part of Janet, later concluding the poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble. It was very, very clever. Ventriloquist Ray Allen visited... Sorry, commercials. Ventriloquist Ray Allen visited the house and concluded that Janet's male voices were simply vocal tricks. Here are some skeptical interpretations. Criticism of investigations. Skeptic Joe Nickel of the U.S.-based Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims in Paranormal, CSICOP, as we covered a little bit, examined the findings of paranormal investigators and criticized them for being overly credulous. When a supposedly disembodied demonic voice was heard, Playfair noted that, as always, Janet's lips hardly seemed to be moving. He states that a remote controlled still camera, the photographer, was not present in the room with the girls. Time to take a picture every 15 seconds was shown by investigator Melvin Harris to reveal pranking by the girls. He argues that a photo allegedly depicting Janet levitating actually shows her bouncing off the bed as if it were a trampoline, explaining why she looked like she was airborne, basically. Harris called the photos examples of common gymnastics and said, "It's worth remembering that Janet was a school sports champion." Hmm. Kind of fits in the little pieces there, doesn't it? Nickel pointed out that a tape recorder malfunctioned that Gross attributed to supernatural activity, and SPR president David Fontana described as an occurrence which appeared to defy the laws of mechanics, was a peculiar threading jam occurring with older model reel-to-reel tape recorders. He also said that Ed Warren was notorious for exaggerating and even making up incidences in such cases, often transforming a haunting case to one of demonic possession. In 2015, Deborah Hyde commented that there was no solid evidence for the Enfield poltergeist. The first thing to note is that the occurrences didn't happen under controlled circumstances. People frequently see what they expect to see, their senses being organized and shaped by their prior experiences and beliefs. Response to claims. Skeptics have argued that the alleged poltergeist voice that originated from Janet was produced by false vocal cords above the larynx and had the phraseology and vocabulary of a child. In a television interview for BBC Scotland, Janet was observed to gain attention by waving her hand in front of her mouth while a claimed disembodied voice was heard. During the interview, both girls were asked the question, "How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?" Janet replied, "It's not haunted," and Margaret, in a hushed tone, interrupted, "Shut up." Skeptics have regarded these factors as evidence against the case. As a magician experienced in the dynamics of trickery, Nickel examined Playfair's account and contemporary press clippings. He noted that the supposed poltergeist tended to act only when it was being watched, and concluded the incidents were best explained as children's pranks, not planks. Although Gross made tape recordings of Janet and believed no trickery was involved, the magician Bob Coit said, "He made some of the recordings available to me, and having listened to them very carefully, I came to the conclusion that there was nothing in what I had heard that was beyond the capabilities of an imaginative teenager." All the recordings have been cataloged and digitized by SPR in a book of their content, The Enfield Poltergeist Tapes. It was produced by Melvin Willen in 2019. In 2016, an article printed by psychologist Chris French in Time Out magazine described 5 reasons why he believed the case to have been a hoax. His reasons are as follows. The 2 sisters involved admitted to hoaxing some of the activity. A photo of Janet levitating above her bed could just as easily be explained as Janet jumping in the air, which was brought up as a selling point to why she was levitating in the photo in the original case. The spirit of the old man who supposedly possessed Janet took a great deal of interest in menstruation. Ugh. Eyewitnesses are notoriously unreliable. Other schoolgirl pranks before and after have gone out of hand. You guys think it was one elaborate hoax and prank? Or were they actually possessed by the man who died in the house years earlier? Let's dive into the popular culture aspect. What's up, pimp? What's up, Joey? Okay, popular culture aspect. On December 26, 1978, BBC Radio 4 broadcast The Enfield Poltergeist by BBC reporter Rosalind Morris. Morris visited the Hodgson family on numerous occasions to make the documentary. In 1992, the BBC aired a controversial mockumentary titled Ghost Watch. Oh, that's a good movie. If you guys haven't seen Ghost Watch, definitely I recommend. Written by Stephen Volk and based on the Enfield Poltergeist. In March 2007, Channel 4 aired a documentary about the Enfield Poltergeist titled Interview with the Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist has been featured in episodes of ITV series Strange But True and Extreme Ghost Stories. The Enfield Poltergeist was the subject of the 2015 Sky Living television series The Enfield Haunting, which was broadcast from May 4th through May 17th, 2015. As we discussed earlier, the 2016 film The Conjuring 2 is based on Ed and Lorraine Warren's investigation of the case. In 2018, the BBC Radio 4 program, The Reunion, presented by Sue McGregor, revisited the case with interviews with witnesses Morris, Richard Gross, and Graham Morris. In 2023, a play titled The Enfield Haunting was announced, starring Catherine Tate, to be premiered at the Theatre Royal, Brighton and Richmond Theatre before moving to the Ambassadors Theatre in London from November 30th, 2023 to March 2nd, 2024. I didn't know that they made a play off of this case. That's interesting. On October 27th, 2023, Apple TV debuted the Enfield Poltergeist miniseries. I heard of that. I wanted to watch it. Filming the documentary in a recreated set of the alleged haunted house at 284 Green Street, utilizing actors lip-syncing to original tape recordings, archival video footage, and modern-day interviews with living witnesses of those events. On October 13th, 2024, BBC Two debuted its series Hauntings. The first episode, The Enfield Poltergeist, revisited the unusual events of 1977 with archival footage and new testimonies from witnesses present in the Enfield house. Gotta check that one out too. So what do you guys think? Do you think the Enfield Poltergeist was one elaborate hoax created by the girls and the family for media attention? Or do you think that they were actually haunted? Leave it to commercials to ruin the mood. Solo, do you believe Ed and Lorraine Warren were legit? It's hard to say because I've gone down a few rabbit holes when it came to the Warrens, and it's like a lot of documentaries and podcasters are kind of split on the if they were legit or not, because you had people like last podcast on the left claiming that the Warrens were just hoaxsters and shucksters and did it all for the money, or you had people saying they were legit, and the fact that they did so many investigations on very popular hauntings and subjects and haunted items that not only did they pave the way for modern day paranormal investigators and demonologists, but that they would genuinely believed in the work that they did, whether people believed that the hauntings were real or not, or that the Annabelle doll was actually cursed. Um, just recently, I think it was earlier this year, if not late last year, there was a guy who was going on tour with the haunted Annabelle doll. And it doesn't look like the one with the movies with like the blank stare and like the like red hair and all that. It actually was a giant vintage haunted Raggedy Ann doll, and he was going to go on tour with it. So meet Annabelle, the famous Annabelle. Well, he ended up dying very early on the tour with the Annabelle doll, and I I don't know. I would have to look. I would have to like Google it a little bit, um, but um, weird, mysterious circumstances surrounding his death and the fact that the doll was in the hotel room with him while on tour, leads people to believe that Annabelle had met her next victim. Listen to Unslept Yet. No, not yet. Nope, not in my car. You guys think Ed and Lorraine Warren were hoaxers? Sorry, I've been eating all day. Nothing beats Jersey Mike's. How many people? How many people died from the Poltergeist movie? You mean the 1980s one? Because the reason that well, in the movie, the reason why that whole town, that little area of houses was haunted was because they built it over a cemetery, but the guy in charge of the duplexes or whatever in the houses was too cheap to pay people to move the bodies. So they kept all the bodies in the ground with the plumbing and all that, and that's why it was so haunted. But if you're talking about the real life people that have died from what people like to call the poltergeist curse, let's see, Heather O'Rourke got really sick and died very young. I think she died during the making of Poltergeist 3, if I remember correctly. Um, but yeah, if you guys don't know, there's like a lot of like movies about hauntings and stuff. There's a really good Blu-ray I recommend called Cursed Films. It talks about movies like Poltergeist and Exorcist that like supposedly killed off and gave bad luck to the cast and crew. But okay, so Heather O'Rourke died. Uh, the older sister nanny character, she ended up being murdered by her boyfriend at the time or her husband, and yeah, I would have to like really like look into it. But those are the two ones that come off the top of my head. I'm calling BS because there was controversy around that. Oh, you mean of the Enfield poltergeist? It is kind of weird how like even the people that support the case, like of it being genuinely haunted, were like these girls seem like kind of sus. Like they were like working together to try to like put one over on the paranormal investigators and demonologists so they could sell the story, or maybe like the mom like was coaching them or something. But even people that believe in, like I said, the people that actually generally believe that there was a haunting in that house said that it did seem like weird, like the girls were in on something, that they were potentially leading them off the trail, sort of speak, of deception. Find our next topic.
Try a whole world of delicious knuckle refreshers.
Since on the subject, this one's going to fit with the theme. Okay. Yeah, but the one house where all the family just up and left, the next people that moved in, that there were fine. Oh, you mean the Demon House? I don't know if you were there earlier when I was covering it. That was a Zach Baggins documentary, and I was discussing how like Zach Baggins like bought the house, made the documentary, and then demolished the house, but kept relics and pieces of the house that he put in his haunted museum um, over in downtown Las Vegas. Been twice. I recommend everyone to go at least once. It is an interesting experience. Okay. Moving on, but also in the frame of the Warren theme. Well, the first topic, Demon House, wasn't really about the Warrens, but more of a modern day investigation. So, since we're on the subject, let's get into the real life Annabelle doll. Oh, you guys ready? Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll that is claimed to be haunted. According to paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, the doll frightened its owners, so it moved to their now closed museum in Connecticut during the 1970s. Academics and science writers have dismissed their claims as myth folklore. A character based on the Warren story, excuse me, a character based on the Warren story is one of the antagonists that appear in the fictional Conjuring universe movies, which are in the same, I guess you could say, investigation universe and the Warrens. According to the Warrens, they were given the doll in the 1970s by a 28-year-old student nurse named Donna from Hartford, Connecticut, who claimed the doll could move by itself and exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. The Warrens said a psychic medium not healthy. I would think being haunted by a demon isn't very healthy. Skeleton keys. Okay, moving on. The Warrens said a psychic medium had told the student nurse and her roommate that the doll had been taken over by the spirit of a dead 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins. The Warrens claimed the doll was demonically possessed and subsequently placed it in a display box at their occult museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Over time, the Warrens publicized various claims about Annabelle. Supposedly, the doll inflicted psychic slashes that drew blood from victims. Ooh, that's creepy. Basically having another fucking firework that scared the shit out of me. Um, basically, I didn't know that part. Psychic slashes. So Annabelle had the idea to slash people on her own accord, psychically. It's like something that would be on Nightmare on Elm Street, huh? Over time, the Warrens publicized various claims about Annabelle. Supposedly, the doll psychic slashes that drew blood from victims caused a priest who insulted the doll to run his car into a tree and stabbed a homicide detective, forcing him into early retirement. It's an evil fucking doll. The story of the doll was featured in the 1980 book The Demonologist, written by Gerald Brittle. The result of what the author has claimed was an exclusive deal with Lorraine Warren. In 2009, Tony DeRosa, Grun's Evergreen Media Group, made a series of deals with the Warrens for the rights to exploit their stories. In 2014, Warner Brothers New Line Cinema claimed rights to the Annabelle story in connection with the chapters from the Demonologist's book, which they say were acquired from Mrs. Warren and or Tony Spera and Graymalkin Media. It's weird that even like investigations get copyright claims or like rights holders. Guess if there's money to be made, right? The Annabelle doll character, based on the Warren story, was featured in the Conjuring universe, a film series that includes the following: Annabelle, Annabelle Creation, and Annabelle Comes Home. The producers did not use the likeness of Raggedy Ann, partially due to the potential trademark issues and partially to make the doll's appearance more unsettling for a horror film. Its appearance has been described as a terrifying porcelain doll that is disfigured and immediately menacing. Yeah, so you look at the one in the movie and she looks evil. Which, I feel like it's more, I could see why they can't do it because copyright issues, but I feel like the original Annabelle doll, the Raggedy Ann one, was way creepier because of its simplicity. Moving on. The character makes its first appearance in James Wan's The Conjuring, 2013. I can't stand commercials. Blinding myself. There we go. Annabelle additionally makes brief appearances in his sequel, James Wan's The Conjuring 2, and Michael Chave's The Curse of the La Llorona, The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It, and The Conjuring Last Rites, as well as in the DC Extended Universe films Aquaman and Shazam, respectively directed by Wan and Annabelle Creation director David F. Sandberg. The doll also appears in Shazam! Fury of the Gods, also directed by Sandberg. Kind of like a little Easter egg, I guess. 2019, the Occult Museum closed due to zoning violations. Probably wouldn't have stayed that long in business a year later because of COVID. 2025, the Warrens' estate promoted online reports that the doll had disappeared as part of a viral marketing campaign for a tour called Devils on the Run, showcasing items from the Warrens' Occult Museum. The doll was never missing, said Tony Spera, the director of New England Society for Psychic Research. We had taken the doll on a brief tour to several locations so paranormal enthusiasts could witness the real-life Annabelle. In July 2025, Devils on the Run tour organizer and host Dan Riviera died unexpectedly in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Riviera had been a lead promoter of the tour and produced videos of the doll on TikTok. In August 2025, it was confirmed that comedian Matt Rife had purchased the Warrens' home in a cult museum in Monroe, Connecticut. The purchase included becoming the legal guardian of the entire haunted collection, including the Annabelle doll, for at least the next 5 years. I wonder what he's going to do with that. You guys think Annabelle's actually haunted? There is a creepy energy around that doll. Sorry about that. Okay, moving on.
Go farther in the all-new Jeep Cherokee Hybrid with over 500 miles of range.
Skeptical investigators and scientific writers have deemed the story of the Annabelle doll as a modern legend and have noted the lack of corroborating evidence to support paranormal claims. Texas State University assistant professor of religious studies Joseph Laycock says that most skeptics have dismissed the Warrens Museum as a full of off the shelf Halloween junk, dolls, and toys. Books you could buy at any bookstore. Laycock calls the Annabelle legend an interesting case study in the relationship between pop culture and paranormal folklore, and speculates that the demonic doll trope, popularized by films such as Child's Play, Dolly Dearest, and The Conjuring, likely emerged from the early legends surrounding Robert the Doll, as well as from a Twilight Zone episode released 5 years prior to the Warren story entitled Living Doll, in which the character of the mother is named Annabelle. Laycock suggests that the idea of a demonically possessed dolls allows modern demonologists to find supernatural evil in the most banal and domestic of places. Living Doll is a really good Twilight Zone episode. If you guys didn't aren't really familiar with the Twilight Zone series. Commenting on publicity for the Warrens Occult Museum coinciding with the film release of The Conjuring, science writer Sharon A. Hill said that many of the myths and legends surrounding the Warrens have seemingly been of their own doing, and that many people may have difficulty separating the Warrens from their Hollywood betrayal. Hill criticized sensational press coverage of the Warrens Occult Museum and its Annabelle doll. She said, like real life Ed Warren, real life Annabelle is actually far less impressive. One of the supernatural claims made about Annabelle by Ed Warren, Hill, said, "We have nothing but Ed's word for this, and also the history and origins of the objects in the museum." So, what do you guys think? Is Annabelle really haunted? I don't know. It does add a creep factor that she ended up killing, or the secret um, coincidence, just the pure coincidence of the guy that was touring with her ended up dying. James Randi had it for over 50 years for anyone that could prove anything paranormal. Anything that like that would receive 1 million. He had plenty to try and they all got debunked. Why didn't Ed and Lorraine Warren go collect that $1 million? Good question. Makes you think that maybe they were in on their own investigations, if you know what I mean. I'm more inclined to be open to the idea of like haunted objects rather than haunted places. Like a cursed energy is part of something, you know? What have we been talking about this whole time? I'm listening but not paying attention. Just different cases of the Warrens. Oh, Joey was. Oh, are you asking Joey what I was talking about? Well, the last subject was the Annabelle doll. We kind of got into the Warrens a little bit too. Give me a second while I pull up the next story. All right. Ranch.
Spending ad dollars on leads that don't lead to revenue, that's like blowing budget on furniture that's all flair, no function. Instead,
I got orbs flying around me. Ooh, that's kind of weird. Moving on. Anyone here familiar with the real life Amityville horror? Let's dive in. Turn that down a little bit. The Amityville Horror is a book by American author Jay Anson, published in September 1977. It is also the basis of a series of films released from 1979 and onward. The book is based on the claims of paranormal experiences by the Lutz family, but has led to controversy and lawsuits over its truthfulness. The original book. On November 3rd, okay, so getting into the case itself. On November 13th, 1974, that's a rough 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr., mugshot, shot and killed 6 members of his family at their home they lived in at 112 Ocean Avenue. A large, beautiful house, by the way, large Dutch colonial revival house situated in the suburban neighborhood in Amityville on the south shore of Long Island, New York. After a trial lasting 7 weeks, DeFeo was convicted of second-degree murder in November 1975 and sentenced to 6 terms of 25 years to life in prison. DeFeo died in prison in March 2021. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house with their three children and dog, Harry. After 28 days, the Lutzes fled the house, claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal phenomena while living there. The events were first publicly reported in Newsday, a local newspaper, on February 14th, 1976. According to the newspaper's report, some friends of the Lutzes confirmed that they had experienced strange phenomena which caused them to leave, while others said that they left because of the house's heating system had failed and they could not afford to repair it. So why not make it up with ghosts, right? So if I'm ever behind on Reddit, I'm just gonna say it's haunted and run away. Moving on. The book describes the house at The book describes the house at 112 Ocean Avenue as remaining empty for 13 months after the Feo murders. In December 1975, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house for what was considered to be a bargain price of $80,000. The five-bedroom house was built in Dutch colonial style and had distinctive gambrel roof. Sorry, I just had to skip that. It also had a swimming pool and a boathouse. Beautiful property, by the way, and house is low as it was located on a canal. George and Kathy married in 1975, but each had their own homes. They wanted to start fresh with new property together. Kathy had three children from a previous marriage: Daniel, 9, Christopher, 7, and Melissa, Missy, 5. They also owned a crossbreed Malamute Labrador dog named Harry. During their first inspection of the house, the real estate broker told them about the DeFeo murders and asked if this would affect their decision. After discussing the matter, they decided that it was not a problem. The Lutz family moved in on December 18th, 1975. Much of the DeFeo family's furniture remained in the house. Ooh, that's. What was I just saying about cursed objects? There's a bunch of shit regarding the Lutzes too, about them taking money and this and that. Yeah, so I've heard objectively. Moving on. Okay. Yeah, cursed objects. Like, see, it would be different if they just bought the house, but the fact that all the original furniture from the murders is still there is, yeah, a little bit. That would bother me. So the furniture remained in the house and was included for $400 as part of the deal. A friend of George Lutz learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed. At the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist and had no experience of what this would entail. Kathy was a non-practicing Catholic and explained the process. George knew a Catholic priest named Father Ray who agreed to carry out the house blessing. In Anson's book, Real Life Priest, Father Ralph J. Picario is referenced to Father Mancuso for privacy reasons. Father Mancuso was a lawyer, judge of the Catholic courts, and a psychotherapist who lived at the local Sacred Heart Rectory. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18th, 1975, and went into the building to carry out the rites. When he flicked the first holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demand that he get out. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with the story a little bit. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18th, 1975, and went into the building to carry out the rites. But when he flicked the first holy water and began to pray, uh, he heard the masculine voice demand that he get out. I already read it, but I gotta reread it to keep on track. When leaving the house, Father Mancuso did not mention this incident to either George or Kathy. On December 24th, 1975, Father Mancuso called George Lutz and advised him to stay out of the second floor room where he had heard the mysterious voice. The former bedroom of Mark and John Matthew DeFeo, and Kathy planned to use as a sewing room. But the call was cut short by static. Following his visit to the house, Father Mancuso allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands similar to stigmata. At first, George and Kathy experienced nothing unusual in the house, talking about their experiences subsequently. They reported that it was as if they were each living in a different house. By mid January 1976, after attempt at the house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced what would turn out to be their final nights in the house. The Lutzes declined to give a full account of the events that took place on this occasion, describing them as too frightening to talk about. Yeah, it does. It's a classic case. Based so many movies off of it. After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, the Lutzes decided to take some belongings and stay at Kathy's mother's house in nearby Deer Park, New York, until they had sorted out the problems within the house. They claim that the phenomena followed them there, with the final scene of Anson's book describing greenish black slime coming up on the staircase towards them. On January 14th, 1976. Stuff like this is why I kind of wish I had a premium, but I'm not going to pay that. January 14th, 1976, George and Kathy Lutz, with their 3 children and their dog, Harry, left 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving all their possessions behind. The next day, a mover arrived to remove the possessions to send to the Lutzes. He reported no paranormal phenomena while inside the house. Maybe it decided to follow them or stay dormant. Hard to say. Okay. The book was written after Tam Mossman, an editor for the publishing house Prentice Hall, introduced George and Kathy Lutz to J. Anson. The Lutzes did not work directly with Anson, but submitted around 45 hours of tape-recorded recollections to him, which were used as the basis of the book. Estimates of the sales of the book are around 10 million copies from the numerous editions. Anson is said to have based the title of the Amityville Horror on the Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft, which was published in 1929. I did not know that little fact. That's interesting. Picture of the house. Very East Coast, old colonial house feel. Really beautiful property. So, moving on, disputes over accuracy. The The role of Father Picario, Father Mancuso in the book, has been given considerable attention. Father Picario stated in an affidavit during a lawsuit in the late 1970s that his only contact with the Lutzes concerning the matter had been by telephone. Other accounts did say that Father Picario did visit the house, but experienced nothing unusual there. In 1979, he described his experience while blessing the Amityville house during an interview for the television series In Search Of. In the interview, he makes it clear that he did not in fact enter the home and that he was slapped by an invisible force and told to get out by a disembodied voice. James and Barbara Cromartie, who bought the house for $55,000, equivalent to $292,000 in 2025, in March 1977 rejected the claims of physical damage to the doors, locks, and windows. Barbara Cromartie argued that they appeared to be the original items and had not been repaired. The couple also revealed that the Red Room was a small closet in the basement and would have been known to the Lutzes because it was not concealed in any way. Local Chinook Indians rejected the claim made in Chapter 11 of the book that the house is built on a site where the tribe had once abandoned the mentally ill and dying. Researchers Rick Morgan and Peter Jordan rejected the claim of cloven hoof prints, Krampus, in the snow on January 1st, 1976. Their investigation revealed that there had been no snowfall at that time. No neighbor reported anything unusual during the time that the Lutzes were living there. Police officers are depicted visiting the house in the book and 1979 film, but records showed that the Lutzes did not call the police. There was no bar in Amityville called the Witch's Brew at the time. Stephen Kaplan and other critics have pointed out the changes were made to the book as if it was reprinted in different editions. In the original hardcover edition, Father Picario's car is an old tan Ford, but he experiences an accident in which the hood flies up against the windshield while he was driving it. In later editions, the car is described as a Chevrolet Nova before reverting back to a Ford. Didn't know those inconsistencies. In May 1977, George and Kathy Lutz filed a lawsuit against William Weber, the defense lawyer for Ronald DeFeo Jr., Paul Hoffman, a writer working on an account of the hauntings, Bernard Burton, and Frederick Mars, both alleged clairvoyants who had examined the house, along with Good Housekeeping magazine, New York Sunday News, and the Hearst Corporation. The Lutzes alleged misappropriation of the names for trade purposes, invasion of privacy, and mental distress. The claims against the new corporations were dropped, and the remainder Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I read it right. And the remainder of the lawsuit was heard by Brooklyn District Court Judge Jack B. Weinstein. In September 1979, Judge Weinstein dismissed Lutz's claims. In September 17, 1979, issue of People magazine, William Weber wrote, "I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine." This refers to a meeting that Weber had with George and Kathy Lutz, during which they discussed what became the outline of Anson's book. Judge Weinstein also expressed concern. Sorry, I got a flashbang there. Expressed concern about the conduct of William Weber and Bernard Burton relating to the affair, stating there is a very serious ethical question when lawyers become literary agents. Weber himself filed a $2 million lawsuit against the couple, charging them with re-enging on their book deal, while the Cromarties launched a suit against the Lutz parents, author Anson and his publisher. During the trials, the Lutzes admitted that virtually everything in the Amityville Horror was nothing but pure fiction, according to the article in the Skeptical Inquirer. George Lutz maintained that the events in the book were mostly true. In June 1979, George and Kathy Lutz took a polygraph test relating to their experiences at the house. The polygraph tests were performed by Chris Gugas and Michael Rice, who were reportedly among the top 5 polygraph experts in America at the time. The results, in Rice's opinion, did not indicate deception or lying. However, skeptics have pointed out that polygraph tests are notoriously unreliable and that there is little evidence that polygraph tests can accurately detect lies. In October 2000, the History Channel broadcast Amityville: The Haunting and Amityville Horror: A Hoax, a 2-part documentary made by horror screenwriter and producer Daniel Ferrens. The debate continues concerning the accuracy of the Amityville Horror. The various owners of the house since 1976 have publicly reported no problems while living there. James Cromartie bought the house in 1977 and lived there with his wife Barbara for 10 years. He commented, "Nothing weird ever happened, except for people coming by because of the book and the movie." And that's probably why they decided to like remodel the windows so they could like die down on like tourists, because the house originally had like distinct windows for it, but like like the ones you see in all the movies and the book and all that, how it originally looked, it's changed slightly, so probably just to get rid of the tourism aspect. I have been there, didn't go inside. Hi bye, hi bye. Same old boring solo. Well, this is part of the paranormal thing that y'all voted for, so take that. So, what do you guys think? Do you think the Amityville case was a hoax, an elaborate scheme to make some money, or do you think it actually was haunted after the series of murders that happened there? Hard to say, because a lot of them like to say that certain energy kind of exists in places left behind where bad stuff has happened. You think about the energy behind like graveyards or places where a lot of terrible things have happened, and that leaves, whether you believe in energy, spirits, or all of that afterlife, a lot of people like to believe that energy is a real thing. So whenever something bad happens at a place, it hangs in the air because of the heaviness of whatever happened there. Why does the paranormal not interest you? 70s music. What you mean by that? This is going to be our last story, anyways. Oh, I gotta finish my food. The music is thematic. Well, that was the end of the at least the Amityville haunting. I do believe in supernatural phenomenon, stuff like that, but a lot of the stuff is getting money made from it. Where is the next Ed and Lorraine at all the supernatural and spiritual dolls and this and that getting took over? It didn't really stop. Zach Baggins still was like the lead haunted paranormal guy. He basically like based a lot of his investigations and stuff off the Warrens because it always like interested him. Thank you. I mean, I could probably do a short one if you guys still want to hear paranormal and the unexplained. Ow. Last Sunday, I covered the Daltov Pass incident in Russia. That's a creepy one. I think I covered DB Cooper last week too. Hmm. Oh, this one's actually kind of local to me. And I've been there a few times. The Queen Mary. The Queen Mary is a retired British ocean liner that operated primarily on the North Atlantic Ocean from 1936 to 1967 for the Cunard Line. It is currently a hotel, museum, and convention space in Long Beach, California. Been there a few times. They went on their haunting tour when I was a kid. Haunted ships. Built by John Brown and Company in Clydebank, Scotland, she was subsequently joined by RMS Queen Elizabeth and Cunard's two-ship weekly express service between Southampton, Cherbourg, and New York. These queens were the British response to the express superliners built by German, Italian, and French companies in the late 20s and early 30s. Following the war, Queen Mary returned to passenger service after she was briefly used in World War II. She was temporarily converted to a troop ship and ferried Allied soldiers during the conflict. But following the war, Queen Mary returned to passenger service as she was originally built for, and along with Queen Elizabeth, commenced the two-ship transatlantic passenger service for which the two ships were initially built. The pair dominated the transatlantic passenger transportation market until the dawn of the jet age in the late 1950s. Travel was changing rapidly at that time. By the mid 1960s, Queen Mary was aging and operating at a loss. After several years of decreased profits, Cunard officially retired the Queen Mary from service in 1967. Then we'll go into its hauntings. So, okay. Again, after several years of decreased profits, Cunard officially retired the Queen Mary from service in 1967, bought by the city of Long Beach to function as a restaurant, museum, and hotel. She left Southampton for the last time on October 31st, Halloween, 1967, and sailed to the port of Long Beach where she was permanently moored. After undergoing extensive refurbishment and modifications, the Queen Mary opened to the public in 1971 and has remained operational ever since. Now, going into the alleged hauntings. And yes, so I've been a couple of times, like I said, but there's a retired Soviet submarine B-427 that's parked right next on the dock to the Queen Mary, and that's a tourist exhibit as well. But following the Queen Mary's permanent docking in California, claims were made that the ship was haunted. These claims began in earnest in the 1980s, possibly done by employees to increase business or spook guests, and have grown since then. For example, in 2008, Time magazine included the Queen Mary among its top 10 haunted places. One of the staterooms is alleged to be haunted by the spirit of a person supposedly murdered there. Other legends include a young girl who haunts the ship's former second-class pool and father who murdered his two daughters on board. However, there is no historical record to support these claims, as no person was murdered aboard the ship. Most deaths on board, or most deaths aboard the ship, were due to natural causes. Further, Center for Inquiry fellow Joe Nickel attributes the Queen Mary's haunting legends to pareidolia, illusory mental images triggered by subjective feelings, and daydreaming commonly experienced by workers doing repetitive chores. That's an interesting take. Going a little bit more into the hauntings. Okay, so getting back into the hauntings. Haunting legends and ghost stories. In addition to her cultural and historical significance, the Queen Mary has a well-deserved reputation for being haunted. Disembodied voices, strange noises, and apparitions have all been documented aboard the ship. Witnesses have seen the spirit of a man crushed by a waterway door and the ghost of a woman who dances in the first-class lounge. One of the staterooms is so haunted that it was closed to the public for 30 years. There is a wealth of documented stories of hauntings, including one from 1989 that occurred in the Maritania Room, also known as the Garden Lounge. The cleaning staff entered the room and saw a guest sitting on a chair in the middle of it. The three staff members were about to call security on the guest when she suddenly vanished, shocking the staff. In 2001, an employee came into work early, around 5:30 a.m., and entered the staff's offices, which formerly housed the Queen Mary's beauty salon. The employee felt someone or something brush against them, then saw a pale figure walking through the office before completely vanishing. Staff and guests also tell tales of Grumpy, a spirit known to growl in people's ears and whose presence is often felt in groups. Another entity wearing overalls has been seen near the propellers in the area known as Shaft Alley. These are just a few stories that build the case for the Queen Mary being thoroughly haunted. Going to a couple. The Legend of Room B340. Over the years, Stateroom B340 has developed the reputation of being the Queen Mary's most haunted room. It is difficult to determine where the legend started, but it is confirmed that passenger Walter J. Adamson died in the room in 1948. There's no record of cause of his death, but it was only afterwards that ghost sightings in the room were reported. Prior to the ship docking in Long Beach, a female passenger in room B340 woke to find a shadow figure standing at the edge of her bed. The entity had pulled the covers off her and vanished into thin air as soon as she woke up. These types of sightings have only increased since the ship was turned into a hotel. Guests have reported waking up to hear the sink and tub faucets running, lights turning on and off, bathroom and closet doors opening and closing, and an unseen entity knocking on the door. The cleaning staff said they saw sheets pulled off the bed right after making it. One second. Sorry about that. I am back. My grandma just came back from the Jackson 5 concert. Looked like fun. They had a tribute to Michael and everything, too. Okay, moving on back to the hauntings. I missed a lot of the chatter. Okay, moving on. As the stories about room B340 have spread, some have moved into the territory of urban legend. One of these stories that in the 1960s, a man had murdered two women and was locked in what is now room B340 or B340, as I've been calling it, until the Queen Mary got to New York. When police had entered the man's room, he'd been violently murdered even though no one else was in the room. Another variation of the story is that a man murdered his two daughters in the room, or that a wife murdered her husband. Whatever version of the story you might hear, it was invented at some point and took on a life as its own. Oh, I thought you were saying the room number six. I'm like, no, it's B340. But due to its haunted reputation, the ship's management closed room B340 for about 30 years. It was only in 2018 that the room reopened after being renovated. Specifically, room B340 reopened on Friday, April 13th, 2018. In 2020, the ship was shut down for 3 years, but room B340 was reopened for reservations on September 13th, 2024. I don't know if I would stay. I don't know if I would exactly stay in a haunted hotel like that, like where they filmed The Shining or whatever. John Petter and Door 13. On July 10th, 1966, a routine safety drill on board the Queen Mary turned tragic when a crew member violently lost his life. In the accident, 18-year-old John Petter was crushed by a door 13, a watertight door on the D deck. Petter had only been a crew member for a few months when he died. He had been tending to the bilge pump when the drill occurred around 3:55 a.m. Unfortunately, he did not make it through the door in time. Another crew member found him, and the watertight door was quickly released. The only visible sign of injury was blood running down Petter's nose, but he likely died at the scene or shortly after the ship's hospital. It is widely believed that Petter's spirit remains decades after his horrific death. A few years after Petter died, a night watchman reported walking towards the former site of door 13 when his German shepherd became frightened, as if seeing something that the guard could not see. The guard then heard a clanging metallic sound moving towards him, causing him causing both him and his dog to flee the area. Over the years, witnesses have reported seeing a shadow figure near door 13 and even claimed to have been chased. There are also reports of a metallic sound, which could be the phantom noise of door 13 slamming shut. One woman saw a man near door 13, who she later identified by old photographs as John Petter. The Lady in White. The Queen's Salon was once the Queen Mary's first class lounge and had been home to the ship's Lady in White for years. The identity of the Lady in White remains a mystery, but she's been seen near the piano dancing to music no one else can hear. Whoever she is, the Lady in White has been one of the ship's most popular and often seen ghosts since it docked in Long Beach, California. The HMS Kurokoa, I'm butchering the hell out of it, collision. By October 2nd, 1942, only 2 days before my birthday, not the year obviously, but the Queen Mary was carrying 15,000 U.S. troops across the Atlantic for wartime service. To prevent being torpedoed, the ship made a zigzag pattern in the water and was escorted by a smaller ship, the HMS Kurokoa, as an added safety precaution. However, disaster struck when the Queen Mary swung towards the Kurokoa. Ernest Watson, a crew member aboard the Kurokoa, was the first to realize the ships would collide and shouted, "She's going to ram us!" Unfortunately, everything happened too fast for the Kurokoa's crew to react on time. The Queen Mary weighed about 81,000 tons. Damn. While the Kurokoa only weighed 4,290 tons. The Queen Mary was also sailing at its maximum cruising speed of 28.5 knots. This combination caused the bow of the Queen Mary to cut the Kurokoa in half. Damn. I did not know that. I knew about the wreck. I didn't know it decimated the ship. The Kurokoa's stern quickly sank with its crew still trapped inside. Yikes. Hell or high water. As survivors on the ship's bow waited for the Queen Mary to rescue them, they instead watched in disbelief as it sailed away. Captain Cyril Illingworth had been ordered not to stop the Queen Mary for any reason and instead called on the two other British ships to rescue the survivors of the Kurokoa. That's pretty messed up. You'd think a shipwreck would be cause for emergency to cause it to at least stop for a little bit. I know it was during the war, but that's pretty cold. Imagine like surviving a horrible crash like that. You just see the ship that hit you still driving away like a hit and run. I feel like I got a mosquito in here. Feeling something crawling on me. It's the black flies. Ooh. Look like I'm wearing a Michael Myers mask. Do 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 do. Hope it's not a mosquito. I've gotten bit already. Okay, going back to the ship disaster. It took nearly 2 hours for the two British destroyers to reach the wreckage of the Curacoa. By that time, most of the crew had died of hypothermia in the frigid Atlantic waters. Yikes. Of the 450 crew members aboard the Curacoa, only 101 survived while the other 329 perished. That's pretty dark. The disaster was kept a secret until the war ended. I didn't know that fact. And it took 4 years to investigate the case. Blame was pointed at the Queen Mary and the Curacoa captains. After a lengthy court battle, Curacoa was found to be two-thirds at fault for the collision. I don't see how, but okay. The court determined that the Curacoa was responsible for maneuvering away from the Queen Mary since it was a smaller ship. Just bad timing, I guess. According to testimony from the officer steering the Queen Mary at the time of the collision, Captain Illingworth had told him that the Curacoa would move and thought the Queen Mary had struck a bomb when it hit the other ship. No, you just decimated a smaller ship, Queen Mary. At the front of the ship where the collision happened, some visitors have reported hearing sounds of metal crushing and the screams of men. Others have heard the sound of rushing water and banging against the ship's side. Hmm.
Introducing the Intellimix Bar Pro with superior sound that captures every voice and every word for precise AI transcription. Designed for IT.
It's only 10:47 here.
Secure and simple. The bar that removes barriers.
Like I'm in the woods searching for something, right? Give me a second. I'll get back to the story in just a minute. Would you guys rather hear more about the Queen Mary hauntings, or should I move on to Haunted Forest? Comment below. If no one has a decision, I could just go back to Queen Mary. Ask if I'm a woman or a man. Oh, the website just went weird. Hold on. It was the ghosts. All right, I'll wrap up the final haunting story, and then we could just play music chill like we always do. Does that sound good? I didn't know you were trans, TJ Maxx. I thought you were married with children. I lost track. Oh, it's really dark. Really dark. Why did my TV just turn off like that? That's weird. I didn't even touch the remote. My TV's literally off. Oh. Okay, that was weird. I didn't touch my remote. My TV turned off and then turned back on just now. And now it's playing a totally different like music genre. Jeez. That was weird. Maybe I should wrap up these ghost stories. Ooh. All right, wrapping up, and then we could just chill. Then smoke a little green, drink a little drink, smoke a little smoke. It was my soul speaking. Was your soul the one that turned off my television and turned it back on now?
Sleep better and save bigger during the Memorial Day event at the Living Spaces Sleep Center. Save up to $500 on a Tempur-Pedic adjustable mattress set.
All right, wrapping up the paranormal hour of Spooky Sunday, and then we could go ahead and chill. Last haunting of the Queen Mary first class swimming pool, Jackie and the Vortex. Let's begin. Queen Mary's first class swimming pool, and I've been there on a tour. It's creepy as hell. Is another major hotspot for paranormal phenomena. People have heard splashing coming from the pool area and even seen wet footprints leading away from the pool. This is highly unusual considering the pool was drained of water years ago. A woman in the 1930s swimwear and a young girl holding a teddy bear have also been seen observed near the first class pool. The ghost of a young girl named Jackie has been around the pool area for years. Jackie is believed to have drowned in the pool, but there are no official records indicating that a drowning ever occurred in either the first or second class pools. This was also backed up by a psychic who investigated the pool and confirmed Jackie's presence. Multiple witnesses have heard Jackie talking and laughing. It's been theorized by psychics and ghost hunters alike that there are vortexes on board the Queen Mary that create a portal for supernatural phenomena. One vortex is located in the boiler room where the body of a crew member known only as John Henry was found. Many investigators have captured audio recordings of ghosts and seen apparitions in the area as well. The second and perhaps more powerful vortex is located in the changing area next to the first class swimming pool. One psychic investigating the Queen Mary stated that the narrow hallway leading to the changing rooms was the center of spiritual energy aboard the ship. People report feeling dizzy in the hallway and getting goosebumps. So, you guys voted for it, and I covered a variety of paranormal and unexplained topics. Uh, Look out tomorrow where I will create another poll on what spooky conspiracy we will be covering next. And you guys vote, and I hear your vote, and I do the topic. So look out for that when it happens. Let's just chill. Hope you guys liked it. I enjoyed covering it. Ow. That's fine if you're tired, if you have to go. Not completely.
Thumbstire is fighting for the working class. My only interest is sticking up for working people in California. Thumbstire will stop free utility companies.
Oh, hush. All right. You know what I'll probably do? I will end this episode of the conspiracy, then restart my stream in like the next 5 minutes as a chill stream. If y'all are interested, see you there. I had a lot of fun covering the paranormal aspects, and just hang tight for about 5 minutes, and we'll end the night off in a very chill way as usual.